The fluorescent lights of Boston General Hospital buzzed like dying wasps. Thaddeus Crane sat in a plastic chair that creaked under his weight, staring at the linoleum floor. Someone had spilled coffee earlier. The stain looked like a map of countries that didn't exist. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. A nurse walked past, rubber soles squeaking. She glanced at him, the man in the expensive suit with blood on his collar, and looked away. People always looked away in hospitals. Eye contact meant involvement. Involvement meant pain. The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m. He'd been sitting there for 6 hours, or maybe it was 6 minutes. Time moved differently in places where people died. Down the corridor, a doctor emerged from the trauma wing. White coat, tired eyes, the universal expression of someone about to deliver news that would change everything. Thaddeus stood. His knees didn't want to support him, but they did anyway. That's what knees did. They kept you upright even when the world was collapsing. The doctor stopped 3 feet away. Professional distance. They taught that in medical school, probably. How to stand far enough that families couldn't grab you when you told them their loved ones were gone. Mr. Crane? Thaddeus nodded. Words required air, and his lungs had forgotten how to process it. Your wife didn't survive the surgery. The internal injuries were too severe. I'm very sorry. The words landed like stones in still water. Thaddeus watched the ripples spread outward, distorting everything. The hallway tilted slightly. He put a hand on the wall. And Leo, the doctor's expression shifted. Not good news, but not the worst news. The middle ground where hope lived on life support. Your son is stable. He's unconscious, but his vitals are strong. However, the pause stretched too long. Pauses before however were never accidental. He sustained significant head trauma. There's swelling in the occipital lobe. That's the part of the brain that processes visual information. Thaddeus knew what the occipital lobe was. He'd studied neuroacoustics in graduate school, the way sound moved through space, the way the brain interpreted frequency and translated it into meaning. He knew how the human machine worked. He just didn't know how to stop it from breaking. What does that mean? We won't know the full extent until he wakes up, but there's a strong possibility of vision impairment, potentially complete cortical blindness. The floor dropped away. Thaddeus was falling, but his body stayed upright. Muscle memory, the same mechanism that let concert pianists play while sleeping. He's 7 years old. I know, I'm sorry. Sorry, the word people used when they couldn't fix things. When competence ended and hope began. Thaddeus had spent his entire career eliminating the need for sorry. He designed buildings where sound behaved perfectly, where every whisper in a concert hall reached the back row with crystalline clarity, where acoustic chaos was engineered into submission. He couldn't engineer his son's brain. Can I see him? The doctor nodded. Room 412, but he's sedated. He won't know you're there. Thaddeus walked, left foot, right foot. The same pattern humans had been using for 200,000 years. It worked. It got him down the corridor past the nurse's station through the door marked 412. The room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Leo looked small in the hospital bed, 7 years old and barely 4 feet tall, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed. IV lines snaked into his arm. A ventilator breathed for him with mechanical precision. His face was pale under the oxygen mask. Dark hair stuck to his forehead with sweat. Thaddeus sat in the chair beside the bed. The plastic creaked again. Everything in hospitals creaked or beeped or hummed. Nothing was silent. The building itself was a symphony of distress. He took his son's hand. The fingers were small and warm and perfect. Piano fingers, his wife used to say. Long and delicate, made for creating beauty. Margaret. Her name hit him like a freight train. She was gone. Not in surgery, not in recovery. Gone. Past tense. A problem that couldn't be solved with engineering or money or perfect acoustic design. The tears came without permission. Silent. Efficient. The way Thaddeus did everything. He didn't sob, didn't make noise, just sat there holding his son's hand while salt water tracked down his face and dripped onto his $2,000 suit. I'm sorry, he whispered. Not to the doctor this time. To Leo. To Margaret. To the universe that had decided a Tuesday in March was a good day for a dump truck to run a red light. The machines beeped. The ventilator hissed. Somewhere down the hall, someone screamed. Thaddeus stayed until sunrise. 2 years later, the world looked different. Not better. Not worse. Different. The way a familiar room looked when you turned off the lights and had to navigate by memory. Thaddeus stood in the kitchen of their Beacon Hill brownstone watching Leo arrange his breakfast by sound. The boy had developed a system. Plate on the left, Cup on the right, fork at 2 o'clock. Everything in its place because placement was the only way to create order in darkness. Toast is ready, Thaddeus said. Leo's head turned toward the sound, not toward Thaddeus, toward the toaster. The click of the heating element shutting off, the subtle pop of bread expanding as it cooled. The boy heard everything now, every creak, every whisper, every frequency between 20 and 20,000 hertz. Burnt, Leo said. It's not burnt. The edges are. I can hear the carbon flaking off. Thaddeus looked at the toast. Leo was right. The corners were dark brown, just this side of black. Microscopic particles of carbon breaking free and falling to the counter. How can you? He stopped. They'd had this conversation before. The doctors called it compensatory sensory enhancement. When the brain lost one input stream, it amplified the others. Leo's auditory cortex had gone into overdrive, processing sound with a precision that made professional musicians jealous. Thaddeus called it a consolation prize, a trophy for surviving when your mother didn't. Leo used his fork to navigate the plate, found the eggs, took a bite, chewed methodically, swallowed. You have a meeting at 9. I know. The Hendrix Project. Concert hall in Providence. You've been working on the acoustic sight lines for 3 months. How do you know that? You talk in your sleep, and I can hear you typing in your office. The keys have different sounds. The letter S is sharper than M. You type S-I-G-H-T-L-I-N-E a lot. Thaddeus stared at his son. The boy was 9 years old now. Taller, thinner, dark circles under his eyes from nights spent listening to the house settle. He wore the same clothes, everyday soft cotton that didn't rustle. Shoes with rubber soles that didn't click. Everything designed to minimize auditory chaos. You should be playing baseball, not memorizing my keyboard patterns. I can't see the ball. Other blind kids play. They use a ball with a beeper. I don't want to play baseball. What do you want to do? Leo set down his fork. Precise, exact, 3 inches from the plate's edge. I want to go to the office with you. I want to understand what you do. Thaddeus looked at his watch. 8:17 a.m., 43 minutes until the meeting with the Hendrix Foundation. 30-minute drive to the office in downtown Boston. Traffic would be light on a Wednesday. He could drop Leo at the after-school program on the way. The place that smelled like crayons and pity, where well-meaning teachers spoke too slowly and too loudly, as if blindness affected hearing. It did affect hearing, just not the way they thought. Not today, Thaddeus said. I have back-to-back meetings all afternoon. You always have meetings. That's what architects do. We meet with clients. We design buildings. We make spaces where sound behaves perfectly. Leo smiled, not with joy, with resignation, the expression of someone who'd heard the same speech too many times. I know, Dad, you've told me. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable. It was the kind that happened when two people ran out of safe things to say. Thaddeus cleared the plates, ran water in the sink. The pipes clanked. The garbage disposal growled. Leo winced at both sounds. Too loud, the boy said. Everything's too loud for you. Not everything, just the things that shouldn't be loud. Thaddeus turned off the water. What does that mean? The pipes, they're knocking. That means the pressure regulator is loose. And the disposal, the bearings are grinding. Metal on metal. It'll burn out in a month if you don't replace it. You hear all that? Leo shrugged. I pay attention. The drive to downtown Boston took 28 minutes. Thaddeus dropped Leo at the Perkins School for the Blind, an institution that had been teaching blind children since 1829. 154 years of expertise. They knew what they were doing. Leo hated it. I don't need to learn Braille, the boy had said on his first day. I can listen to audiobooks. Braille is important, Thaddeus had insisted. It's literacy, independence. Reading is processing information. I can process information by listening. That's not the same. Why not? Thaddeus hadn't had an answer. He still didn't. But the school insisted and doctors recommended, and everyone who'd studied childhood development said blind children needed structure and socialization and skills training. So Leo went. 5 days a week, 8 to 3, learning to read dots and navigate with a cane and pretend the world was accessible. Thaddeus watched his son walk through the entrance, white cane tapping the sidewalk in the prescribed rhythm. Tap, tap, step, tap, tap, step. Mechanical, efficient, joyless. He put the car in gear and drove away before the guilt could paralyze him. The office was on the 14th floor of a glass tower in the financial district. Crane Acoustics, established 1978, 5 years of building a reputation as the man who could make any space sound perfect. Symphony halls, recording studios, conference rooms where every word carried weight and clarity. His secretary looked up when he entered. Mr. Hendricks is waiting in conference room B. He brought his board. His board, all 7 members. They want to discuss budget concerns. Budget concerns, the polite phrase for we think you're charging too much. Thaddeus had been through this dance before. Clients hired him because they wanted perfection. Then they saw the invoice and decided good enough was acceptable. He grabbed his portfolio and walked to conference room B. 7 men in expensive suits sat around a table. Mr. Hendricks, silver hair, 65 old money, stood to shake hands. Thaddeus, thank you for meeting us. Of course. They sat. Hendricks gestured to a man on his right. This is Gerald Whitmore, our financial officer. He has some questions about the Providence project. Whitmore opened a folder. Numbers, spreadsheets. The universal language of people who measured value in dollars instead of beauty. The acoustic paneling you specified costs $400 per square foot. That's 3 times the industry standard. The industry standard produces industry standard results, Thaddeus said. You hired me because you wanted a concert hall that rivals the Musikverein in Vienna. That requires custom fabricated panels with precise diffusion coefficients. But surely there are alternatives. There aren't, not if you want the sound I promised. Whitmore's jaw tightened. Mr. Crane, the foundation has a fiduciary responsibility. And I have a professional responsibility to deliver what I promised. If you want to save money, we can use standard panels. But when the first violinist in row 7 can't hear the cellos in row 3, don't call me asking why the acoustics are muddy. Silence, the uncomfortable kind. Thaddeus had learned to tolerate discomfort. It was a tool. People filled silence with compromise. Hendricks cleared his throat. Perhaps we could review the specifications again. See if there are areas where we can economize without sacrificing core quality. Translation, we'll cut corners and blame you if it sounds terrible. I'll prepare a revised proposal, Thaddeus said, but I won't compromise structural integrity. The acoustic mathematics don't negotiate. The meeting lasted another 40 minutes. By the end, they'd agreed to maintain the panel specifications, but reduce the number of sound-absorbing baffles in the upper gallery. It would affect the acoustics. Thaddeus knew it. Hendricks knew it. But budgets were budgets, and compromise was the price of doing business. He returned to his office and stared at the blueprints on his desk. The Providence Hall. 3 years of design work, computer modeling, acoustic simulations. Every angle calculated to create perfect sound dispersion. Now they wanted him to remove baffles, like asking Michelangelo to leave off David's hands to save marble. His phone rang, the secretary. Mr. Crane, there's a call from the Perkins School. They say it's urgent. His stomach dropped. Urgent calls from schools meant injuries, accidents, problems that couldn't wait until 3 o'clock pickup. Put them through, a woman's voice, professional but strained. Mr. Crane, this is Principal Morrison. Leo is fine, but there's been an incident. What kind of incident? He became disruptive during music class, started shouting that the piano was out of tune. The teacher tried to calm him down, but he insisted the C-sharp key was 32 cents flat. He was quite adamant. Thaddeus closed his eyes. Was he right? A pause. We brought in the piano tuner. The C-sharp was indeed slightly flat, but Mr. Crane Leo's behavior was inappropriate. He called the teacher tone deaf. He refused to participate until the piano was corrected. He has perfect pitch. Hearing an out-of-tune instrument probably feels like, Thaddeus searched for an analogy, like staring at a crooked painting, physically uncomfortable. I understand that, but he needs to learn to manage his reactions. We can't have him disrupting classes every time something sounds wrong to him. Everything sounds wrong to him, that's the problem. Another pause. Longer. We'd like you to come in for a meeting, discuss strategies for helping Leo integrate more successfully. Integration, the word people used when they meant conform. Fit in, stop being difficult. I'll be there tomorrow, Thaddeus said. He hung up and returned to the blueprints. The Providence Hall stared back at him, a building designed for perfect sound, where every note would bloom in the air like a flower, where musicians could hear themselves and each other with crystalline clarity. His son couldn't walk into a music classroom without having a meltdown because one key was out of tune. Thaddeus had spent his career making spaces where sound behaved. Maybe it was time to figure out how to help his son behave in spaces where sound was broken. Thursday morning, rain turning Boston's brick sidewalks into mirrors. Thaddeus drove Leo to the Perkins School windshield wipers beating a rhythm that matched his pulse. The boy sat in the passenger seat, hands folded in his lap, face pointed toward the window he couldn't see through. Am I in trouble? No. Principal Morrison said there was an incident. She wants to discuss strategies. That's different from trouble. It sounds the same. Thaddeus glanced at his son, already fluent in institutional euphemism. You were right about the piano. That's not wrong. But I wasn't nice about it. No, you weren't. The teacher kept saying it sounded fine, but it didn't sound fine. It sounded painful. I know. Do you, Leo turned toward him, face intense. Do you actually know what it's like to hear something wrong and have everyone tell you it's right? Thaddeus thought about the Providence Hall, the compromise baffles, the acoustics that would be good but not great, the client insisting it was fine, the same lie in a different key. Yes, he said, I know exactly what that's like. They parked in the circular drive, red brick building, white columns, architecture from an era when institutions looked like temples, designed to inspire confidence through symmetry and permanence. Principal Morrison met them in her office. 50s, efficient haircut, walls covered in diplomas and awards, evidence of expertise displayed like armor. Thank you for coming, Mr. Crane. She shook his hand. Please sit. They sat. Leo's hands found the armrests of his chair, mapping the dimensions, understanding the space through touch. I want to start by saying we appreciate Leo's talents. Perfect pitch is rare, extraordinary even. But, Thaddeus said, but he needs to understand that in a community setting, individual sensitivities can't always be accommodated. The piano was slightly out of tune. Most people didn't notice. Leo's reaction was disproportionate. Most people aren't listening the way he listens. I understand that. However, he has cortical blindness, Thaddeus interrupted. His brain processes sound at a level that would be considered pathological if we called it what it is. Auditory hypersensitivity. Every frequency is amplified. Every dissonance is physical pain. Asking him to ignore an out-of-tune piano is like asking you to ignore a fire alarm. Morrison leaned back. Are you suggesting we keep the piano in perfect tune at all times? I'm suggesting you understand that what sounds like a minor imperfection to you is a screaming siren to him. Mr. Crane, I've been teaching blind children for 23 years. I've worked with hundreds of students with various degrees of auditory sensitivity. Leo is not unique in his challenges. No, he's unique in his precision. The words came out harder than intended. Morrison's expression tightened. Leo shifted in his chair. Perhaps, she said, we should discuss alternative approaches. There are therapeutic techniques for managing sensory overload. Cognitive behavioral strategies. You want to teach him to ignore what he hears. I want to teach him to function in the world as it exists, not as he wishes it would be. Thaddeus stood. The chair scraped against the floor. Loud, discordant. Leo winced. The world as it exists is full of people who can't hear that things are wrong. That doesn't mean we should train the people who can hear to stop listening. Mr. Crane, thank you for your time, Principal Morrison. We'll discuss this at home. He walked out. Leo followed Kane, tapping the institutional tile. They didn't speak until they reached the car. Are we leaving? Yes. Where are we going? Thaddeus started the engine. I don't know yet. They drove. No destination, just movement. Past the Charles River, through Cambridge. Into neighborhoods where brownstones gave way to triple-deckers. Working-class blocks where laundry hung from fire escapes and corner stores sold cigarettes and lottery tickets. He pulled into the parking lot of a diner. Riverside Cafe, chrome exterior, neon sign that buzzed with failing transformer. The kind of place that served coffee in chipped mugs and called everyone honey. Why are we stopping? Leo asked. I need coffee, and you need lunch. It's 10:30, and then you need early lunch. Inside the diner smelled like bacon grease and burnt toast. A bell above the door jangled when they entered. Leo flinched at the sound. Too sharp, too sudden, a sensory ambush. Table for two. The hostess was young, early 20s, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. Name tag Miriam. Please, Thaddeus said. She led them to a booth near the window. Vinyl seats patched with duct tape. Table with scratches that told 1,000 stories. Leo sat carefully, hands exploring the surface, finding the edges, the napkin dispenser, the sticky residue of syrup some previous customer had spilled. Miriam placed menus in front of them, plastic, laminated, probably last updated in 1975. I'll give you a minute to look over. She stopped, looked at Leo, at the white cane leaning against the booth. Oh, Would you like me to read the menu, Simon? I'm fine, Leo said. You sure I don't mind? He said he's fine, Thaddeus said. Miriam's cheeks flushed. Of course, I'll be right back. She walked away. Leo tracked her movement by the sound of her shoes on the linoleum. Soft rubber soles, slight squeak on the left foot, probably worn heel. You could have been nicer, Leo said. She was being condescending. She was being helpful. There's a difference. Is there? Thaddeus looked at his son, at the serious expression, already exhausted by other people's good intentions. No, Thaddeus admitted, there isn't. I'm sorry. The diner's noise level was climbing. Someone dropped a plate in the kitchen. The crash echoed. Leo's hands went to his ears. Not dramatic, just reflexive. The same way people blinked at bright lights. We can leave, Thaddeus said. It's okay, I can filter it. Filter? The sound? I'm learning to sort it. Important versus background. Like, Leo tilted his head. Right now there are 17 conversations happening. The couple in the corner is arguing about money. The old man at the counter is ordering pie. The cook is singing something. If I focus, I can hear all of them. But if I don't focus, it's just noise. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's better than screaming. Miriam Rebartzer turned with a notepad. What can I get you? Coffee, black, Thaddeus said. And for you, honey, Leo turned toward her voice. Hot chocolate. And toast, not burnt, just golden. And can you cut the crusts off? Miriam wrote it down. Sure thing. Anything else? The espresso machine needs descaling. The pump sounds like it's working too hard, and someone in the kitchen is using a dull knife to chop vegetables. You can hear the blade crushing instead of cutting. Miriam stared. How do you? He has exceptional hearing, Thaddeus said. I'll say. She glanced at Leo. I'll tell the cook about the knife. The espresso machine, though, that's probably above my pay grade. She left. Leo smiled. She thinks I'm weird. You are weird. Thanks, Dad. Weird isn't bad. Weird is just different. Principal Morrison doesn't think different is good. Principal Morrison thinks conformity is safety. She's not entirely wrong. But she's not entirely right either. Thaddeus looked at his son, at the boy who heard the world in frequencies and overtones, who lived in darkness but mapped his surroundings with sound, who was different in ways that scared teachers and confused doctors and broke his father's heart. No, Thaddeus said. She's not entirely right. The food arrived. Leo's toast was perfect, golden brown, crusts removed. He used his fingers to confirm before taking a bite. Thaddeus drank coffee that tasted like burnt regret. They sat in comfortable silence listening to the diner's symphony, plates clattering, conversations overlapping, the espresso machine grinding its way toward mechanical failure. Somewhere behind the counter, Miriam was talking to the cook. Her voice carried. Young. Educated. Too articulate for someone serving coffee in a diner. I'm telling you the knife is dull. The kid said so. What kid? The blind boy. He could hear it. A laugh, dismissive. He could hear a knife being dull. Come on. I'm serious. He also said the espresso machine needs descaling. Did he diagnose your car troubles too? More laughter. Thaddeus felt his jaw tighten. Leo's expression didn't change, but his shoulders tensed. He heard it too. The mockery wrapped in humor. Ignore them, Thaddeus said. I always do. But that was the problem, wasn't it? Leo always ignored it, always filtered it, always pretended that living in a world designed for sighted people didn't hurt. And Thaddeus let him, because acknowledging the pain meant confronting his own failure to fix it. His phone rang, office number. He answered. Mr. Crane, the Hendricks Foundation called. They've decided to pull the Providence project. They found another architect, someone more flexible on budget. The words hit like a punch. 3 years of work. Gone. Because he wouldn't compromise on acoustic integrity. Thank you for letting me know, he said. He hung up, set the phone on the table, stared at the cold coffee in his cup. What happened? Leo asked. I lost a project. The concert hall. Yes. Because you wouldn't cut corners. Because I couldn't make the math negotiate. Leo was quiet for a moment. Then good. Good. You told me once that architecture is about truth, that buildings either work or they don't. There's no middle ground. I said that 3 years ago when I asked why you couldn't just fix my eyes. You said some things can't be fixed. They can only be accepted and adapted to. Thaddeus remembered. Late night, Leo crying, asking the question every disabled child asked eventually. Why me? And Thaddeus, out of comfort and into honesty, explaining that the brain was architecture too. Structures that couldn't be rebuilt, only redesigned. I shouldn't have said that. Why not? It was true. It was cold. Truth usually is. They finished eating. Thaddeus paid the bill, left a large tip because guilt was cheaper than therapy. They walked to the car. The rain had stopped. Weak sunlight broke through the clouds, turning puddles into mirrors. Dad, yes. Can we not go back to Perkins? Thaddeus stopped. Hand on the car door. Where would you go? I don't know. Home, your office, anywhere but there. You need school, education, socialization. I need to stop pretending I'm like everyone else when I'm not. The honesty was brutal, sharp enough to cut. Thaddeus looked at his son, at the boy who heard what others couldn't, who lived in a world of sound and silence, who was asking for permission to stop performing normalcy. Okay, Thaddeus said. Okay, we'll figure something else out. No more Perkins. Leo's face transformed. Not quite a smile, more like relief. The expression of someone who'd been holding their breath and finally exhaled. They got in the car, drove home, through streets where construction crews jackhammered pavement and car horns created chaos. Leo sat quietly filtering it all, sorting important from background. Surviving in a world that was too loud and too bright and too insistent that different meant broken. Thaddeus pulled into their driveway. The brownstone stood solid, 3 stories of brick in history. He'd bought it because the walls were thick. Sound didn't travel. Privacy was structural. Inside, Leo went straight to his room. Thaddeus heard the door close, the lock click, the boy's refuge from a world that demanded he be someone he wasn't. Thaddeus stood in the kitchen, looked at the sink where the pipes knocked, the disposal that ground with failing bearings, the house that was falling apart in frequencies only his son could hear. He'd spent his career creating perfect acoustic environments for strangers. Maybe it was time to create one for the person who needed it most. He pulled out his phone, dialed the office. Cancel my appointments for the rest of the week. All of them. All of them. He hung up, walked to the basement, found the pressure regulator, turned it clockwise, 3/4 rotation. The knocking stopped. Silence rushed in to fill the space. From upstairs, Leo's door opened. Dad, yeah. The pipe stopped singing. I fixed the regulator. A pause, then thank you. Thaddeus climbed the stairs. His son stood in the hallway, faced toward the sound of footsteps. Expression cautious. I'm going to fix the disposal too, Thaddeus said, and we're going to soundproof your room properly. And I'm going to teach you everything I know about acoustics. Why mine? Because you hear things I don't. And maybe instead of teaching you to ignore what you hear, I should learn to listen. Leo nodded slowly. What about school? We'll hire tutors, private instruction, people who understand that different isn't defective. Principal Morrison won't like that. Principal Morrison can write her concerns in a letter. I'll frame it. For the first time in 2 years, Leo laughed. Not polite, not performative. Real laughter. The sound of a child who'd been given permission to stop pretending. Thaddeus felt something crack in his chest. Not breaking. Opening. The architecture of grief shifting to accommodate something that looked almost like hope. Come on, he said. Let's go to take apart that disposal and see what's actually wrong with it. They went to the basement together. Father and son, one who could see but didn't listen, one who couldn't see but heard everything, learning finally to build a world where both made sense. 6 months passed like water through a sieve. Summer bled into fall. The brownstone on Beacon Hill transformed from a house where sound was tolerated into a laboratory where it was studied. Thaddeus had converted the 3rd-floor guest room into what he called the listening chamber. Acoustic panels lined the walls, custom fabricated the same ones the Hendrix Foundation had deemed too expensive. Cork flooring absorbed footsteps. Double-pane windows sealed out street noise. The room existed in a state of controlled silence, a void where sound could be examined like a specimen under glass. Leo spent hours there, headphones on, breathing synchronized with a metronome, listening to recordings Thaddeus brought home from work. Concert halls, recording studios, the acoustic fingerprint of spaces designed for perfection. This one's too bright, Leo said. The high frequencies are bouncing off something hard. Glass maybe, or polished marble. Thaddeus checked his notes. Symphony Hall in Birmingham. Marble columns in the upper gallery. Correct. And this one, Leo switched tracks. The bass is muddy. Something's absorbing the low end unevenly. The Berlin Philharmony, carpet in the orchestra pit. They removed it in 1987. They should have removed it earlier. Thaddeus smiled. His son had become ruthlessly honest about acoustic failures. No politeness, no diplomacy, just truth delivered in frequencies and overtones. The tutors came 3 times a week: mathematics, history, literature, each session carefully structured around Leo's needs. No fluorescent lights humming overhead, no classroom chaos. Just one student and one teacher in a space where sound behaved. Mrs. Alvarez taught mathematics, 60s. She brought tactile models, geometric shapes. Leo could feel graphs rendered in raised lines on special paper. If the concert hall is 60 meters long and the speed of sound is 343 meters per second, how long does it take for sound to reach the back row? Leo's fingers moved across the raised surface. 0.175 seconds. But that's direct path. If you account for reflection, I didn't ask about reflection. You should have. Direct path is meaningless in a real space. Sound bounces. Mrs. Alvarez laughed. You're right, it does. Show me the calculation including first-order reflections. They worked through the problem together. Thaddeus watched from the doorway, grateful for a teacher who didn't mistake blindness for stupidity. The literature tutor was younger. Mr. Chen, MIT graduate student, working on his doctorate in comparative literature. He read aloud Steinbeck, Hemingway, Baldwin, and discussed themes like Leo was a peer instead of a child. The Old Man and the Sea is about persistence, Chen said. The struggle against impossible odds. It's about pride, Leo countered. The old man refuses to accept his limitations. That's not noble, it's stubborn. Can it be both? Being stubborn about impossible things just makes you suffer longer. Chen was quiet for a moment. Is that what you think, that accepting limitations is better than fighting them? I think there's a difference between fighting something you can change and fighting something you can't. Thaddeus turned away from the door. His son was 9 years old and already understood what most adults spent lifetimes learning. Some battles weren't meant to be won. They were meant to be survived. October arrived with cold rain and dying leaves. Thaddeus sat in his office downtown reviewing blueprints for a recording studio in Cambridge. The client wanted perfection on a budget that demanded compromise. Same story, different project. His phone rang, unknown number, Boston area code. Thaddeus Crane. Mr. Crane, this is Dr. Miriam Ashford. We met briefly at the Riverside Cafe about 6 months ago. I was your server. The blonde with the ponytail, the one who'd offered to read the menu and then believed Leo about the dull knife. I remember. How can I help you? I'm calling because I'm not actually a waitress. Well, I am, but that's temporary. I'm a research scientist, auditory neuroscience. I was working at MIT until, she paused, until I had a disagreement with my department about ethical research practices. What kind of disagreement? The kind where they wanted to study children with auditory processing disorders, and I refused to let them treat those children like laboratory equipment. Thaddeus sat forward. Go on. I've been following your son's case. Not stalking, I promise. But after that day at the diner, I was curious. I made some calls, talked to doctors at Boston General. Leo's auditory cortex development is extraordinary. The way his brain compensated for vision loss, it's unprecedented. Lots of blind people develop enhanced hearing. Not like this. Most blind individuals show 15 to 20% improvement in auditory discrimination. Leo's processing sound at a level that's 200% above baseline. He's not just hearing better, he's hearing differently. What's your point, Dr. Ashford? My point is that I'd like to study him properly, ethically, with your full consent and his comfort as the primary concern. I think I can help him understand what's happening in his brain, and maybe, she hesitated, maybe help him control it. Control it. The sensory overload, the pain when things sound wrong. There are techniques, auditory gating exercises, ways to filter input consciously instead of just enduring it. Thaddeus thought about Leo flinching at dropped plates, covering his ears at sirens, living in a world that assaulted him with frequencies he couldn't escape. What would this study involve? Brain scans, behavioral testing, nothing invasive? I'd come to your home if that's more comfortable. Work around his schedule. This would be collaborative, not extractive. Well, no, why should I trust you? Because I walked away from a fully funded research position rather than compromise my ethics. And because I've spent the last 6 months working at a diner instead of begging MIT to take me back. I don't need this research for my career. I need it because your son's brain is trying to tell us something about human adaptation, and I want to listen. Honesty, unvarnished and direct. Thaddeus appreciated that. I'll discuss it with Leo. If he's interested, we can arrange a meeting. Thank you. And Mr. Crane, for what it's worth, you're doing the right thing. Taking him out of Perkins? Most parents would have forced him to adapt. You're adapting the world to him instead. She hung up. Thaddeus sat in the quiet of his office looking at blueprints that promised perfect acoustics through mathematics and materials. His son's brain had achieved the same result through trauma and necessity. Maybe there was something to learn from that. That evening, Thaddeus found Leo in the listening chamber. The boy sat cross-legged on the floor, headphones on. A metronome ticked in the corner. 60 beats per minute. Leo's breathing synchronized with it. Thaddeus waited until the track ended. Leo pulled off the headphones. Someone called today. Dr. Ashford, from the diner. The waitress. The neuroscientist pretending to be a waitress. She wants to study your hearing. Says she can help you manage the sensory overload. Leo was quiet for a long moment. What does study mean? Brain scans, tests, questions about what you hear and how you hear it. Will it hurt? She says no. Do you believe in? Thaddeus thought about Miriam Ashford's voice on the phone. The conviction, the careful ethics. Yes, I do. Then okay. You don't want to think about it. What's there to think about? Right now, my brain screams at me when things sound wrong, and I just have to survive it. If she can teach me to turn down the volume, that's better than surviving. The casual acceptance broke Thaddeus's heart. His son had already learned that survival was the best available option. Not happiness, not comfort, just endurance with slightly less pain. I'll call her tomorrow. Doctor. Miriam Ashford arrived on a gray Saturday morning. She drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a dented bumper and an expired MIT parking sticker. She wore jeans and a sweater, carried a leather bag that looked like it had survived a war. Thaddeus opened the door. She was younger than he remembered, late 20s, blonde hair pulled back in the same ponytail, bright eyes that missed nothing. Thank you for agreeing to this, she said. Thank Leo, it's his brain. She smiled. Smart kid. Too smart. It makes things complicated. They went inside. Leo was waiting in the living room, sitting in his designated chair, the leather one that didn't creak. He turned toward the sound of footsteps. Dr. Ashford, you can call me Miriam. Dr. Ashford sounds like someone who's gonna poke you with needles. Are you going to poke me with needles? Not even a little bit. Leo relaxed slightly. Miriam sat on the couch across from him, set her bag on the floor. Before we start, I want to establish some ground rules. First, you're in control. If anything makes you uncomfortable, we stop. Second, I'm not here to fix you. You're not broken. I'm here to help you understand what your brain is doing. Third, if I ask a question you don't want to answer, you don't have to. Okay. Okay. Good. Now, Miriam pulled out a notebook. Tell me what you hear right now in this room. Leo tilted his head. Your heartbeat, it's elevated. You're nervous. I am nervous. What else? The refrigerator in the kitchen, the compressor's cycling, and there's a loose wire in the wall right there. He pointed to a spot 6 feet away. It's vibrating against the stud. 60-cycle hum. Miriam looked at Thaddeus. Is that accurate? I have no idea. She stood, walked to the wall, put her ear against it. Her expression shifted. I can barely hear it. It's like a mosquito. It's louder than that, Leo said. It's like someone humming, constant. It never stops. Miriam returned to the couch, wrote in her notebook. Does that bother you? Everything bothers me. Everything that sounds wrong, and most things sound wrong. Can you give me an example, Leo thought. Cars. The engines are never synchronized. Pistons firing at slightly different intervals. It sounds like a drummer who can't keep time. Painful. What about voices? Voices are okay, mostly, unless someone has a speech impediment or their vocal cords are strained, then it sounds like an instrument out of tune. Miriam wrote faster. What about music? I can't listen to recorded music anymore. The compression algorithms cut frequencies. It's like looking at a painting with half the colors missing. So you only listen to live music? I don't listen to music at all. Miriam's pen stopped. Why not? Because perfect music is rare and imperfect music hurts. Why would I subject myself to that? Thaddeus had never heard his son articulate it so clearly. The boy had given up joy to avoid pain, choosing numbness over suffering. Miriam closed her notebook. Leo, what you're describing is called hyperacusis, extreme sensitivity to sound. But yours is different. You're not just sensitive to volume, you're sensitive to precision. Your brain is processing acoustic information at a level that's, she searched for words, It's like having a microscope for ears. You're hearing details nobody else can hear. So I'm supposed to learn to tolerate it. No, you're supposed to learn to filter it. Your brain is trying to process everything at maximum resolution all the time. That's exhausting. We need to teach you to adjust the resolution. Focus on what matters. Let the rest blur into background. How? That's what we're going to figure out together. The sessions became routine. 3 times a week, Miriam arrived with equipment and exercises. Some days they worked in the listening chamber. Other days in the kitchen, the living room out on the street. Teaching Leo to exist in imperfect acoustic environments without suffering. Close your eyes, Miriam said. They were standing on Beacon Street, traffic rushing past. Tell me what you hear. Everything. Cars, buses, horns, brakes, engines. I know you hear everything. Now choose one thing, just one. Focus on it. Let everything else become texture. Leo's face tightened with concentration. The bus. Number 43. The transmission is slipping. Good. Stay with that. Just the bus. Everything else is white noise. Sweat beaded on Leo's forehead. The effort of selective filtering was physical, but slowly his shoulders relaxed. It's quieter. The bus got quieter. No, everything else got quieter, because I'm not listening to it. Exactly, that's auditory gating. You're choosing what to process. The sound is still there. You're just not letting it through the gate. They practiced for weeks, months. Leo got better. Not perfect. Perfect was impossible, but better. He could walk through a crowded mall without covering his ears, could tolerate the television if the volume was low, could exist in the world without constant pain. But there were still bad days, days when the gating failed and everything crashed through at once. Days when Leo locked himself in his room and didn't come out until the world quieted down. Miriam never judged those days. She just adjusted the exercises, tried new approaches, treated Leo like a partner in the research instead of a subject. Thaddeus watched his son transform. Not into someone normal, Leo would never be normal, but into someone functional. Someone who could control the gift that had been controlling him. One evening, Miriam stayed late. He's remarkable, Miriam said. He's remarkable, Miriam said. He's 9. I know, but his auditory processing, I've never seen anything like it. The precision, the range. He can hear frequencies at the edge of human perception and distinguish between them. It's like he has sonar. That's helpful. It could be if he learns to use it intentionally instead of just enduring it. But Thaddeus drank his coffee. It was mediocre, not terrible, but not good. But Miriam drank it anyway. Politeness, probably. Can I ask you something? She said. Go ahead. Why did you pull him from Perkins? Most parents would have fought to keep him in the system. Free education, socialization, support services. The system wanted him to conform. I wanted him to exist. That's not a small distinction. No, it's not. Miriam set down her mug. I left MIT because they wanted me to study children like Leo as case studies. Data points, evidence for research papers. They didn't care about the children. They cared about the publications. So you became a waitress. So I became ethical. She smiled. The waitress thing was just temporary, until I found someone who actually wanted to help instead of exploit. And you think that's me? I think that's you. You're building a world for Leo instead of forcing him into a world that doesn't fit. That's rare. Thaddeus looked at his coffee, at the reflection of kitchen lights on the dark surface. I'm just trying not to fail him worse than I already have. You haven't failed him. His mother died because I was working late. I wasn't there to drive them home. If I'd been there, you'd have died too, or you'd have survived and blamed yourself anyway. Guilt isn't rational, Mr. Crane. It's just persistent. She was right. He knew she was right, but knowing didn't make the weight lighter. Thank you, he said, for helping him. Thank you for letting me. She left. Thaddeus sat in the quiet kitchen listening to the house breathe. The refrigerator hummed. The pipes ticked as they cooled. The loose wire in the living room wall vibrated at 60 cycles per second. He could hear it now, not as clearly as Leo, but clearly enough. Maybe that was progress. Winter came to Boston like a punishment. Snow buried the streets. Wind screamed through the gaps in old buildings. The city slowed to a crawl, everyone moving through cold that turned breath to fog. Thaddeus worked from home most days. The office felt increasingly pointless. Fewer clients, fewer projects. The architecture world had moved on from acoustic perfection to cost efficiency. He was a specialist in a field that no longer valued specialization. But the work with Leo continued. Miriam brought new challenges, new tests, new equipment. I want to try something, she said one January morning. Snow fell outside the windows, the world muffled and white. We're going to take Leo somewhere loud, chaotic, and we're going to see if he can navigate it using only sound. Navigate, map the space, identify objects, move through it without sight or touch. Pure echolocation. That's impossible. Blind people do it all the time, just not with Leo's precision. I think he can do it better. They chose Symphony Hall. Thaddeus had access through his work. The building was empty on weekday mornings, closed for maintenance, perfect for experimentation. Leo stood in the center of the main floor, seats rising in tiers around him, ceiling soaring 50 feet overhead, acoustic panels lining the walls, a space designed for perfect sound dispersion. Okay, Miriam said. No cane, no hands on walls, just sound. I want you to walk to the stage. Tell me what you encounter along the way. Leo clicked his tongue. The sound bounced off surfaces, returned to him carrying information. He took a step forward. There's a row of seats 3 feet ahead, upholstered. The fabric absorbs high frequencies. Another click, another step. The aisle curves left. The floor is carpeted. Sound is deader here. He moved with confidence that seemed impossible. No hesitation, no fumbling, just steady progress based on acoustic feedback. Thaddeus watched hard in his throat. His son was navigating a complex space using only the echoes of tongue clicks. It was like watching someone see with sound. Leo reached the stage, climbed the steps, stood where orchestras performed. The ceiling is curved, he said. Sound pools here. That's why soloists stand in this spot. Their sound gets amplified by the architecture. Miriam was writing frantically. How do you know that? Because I can hear the room breathing. It has lungs. The ceiling is the diaphragm. Rooms don't breathe. This one does. Thaddeus walked onto the stage, stood beside his son. What do you mean it breathes? Leo clicked again, listened. Air moves through the ventilation system, but it's not random. It flows in patterns, in and out, like respiration, and the sound moves with it. The room is alive. It was poetry, or madness, or both. Thaddeus couldn't tell, but he could hear it, if he listened carefully, the subtle movement of air. The way sound shifted and flowed. The building was an instrument, and his son could play it. Miriam joined them on stage. Leo, what you're doing this level of acoustic mapping, it's extraordinary. Most echolocation is crude, basic obstacle detection, but you're processing spatial information with incredible detail. It's just listening. No, it's architecture. You're building three-dimensional models in your mind using only sound. That's not just listening. That's something else entirely. Thaddeus looked at Miriam. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, she paused. I'm thinking that Leo doesn't just hear buildings. He understands them, the way they're constructed, where the weak points are, where stress accumulates. How could he possibly know that? Because materials under stress sound different. Metal fatigue has a specific acoustic signature. So does concrete with internal cracks. Wood with rot. Leo can hear those signatures. That's impossible. Also is navigating Symphony Hall blindfolded using tongue clicks. But he just did it. Thaddeus turned to his son. Can you really hear when buildings are damaged? Leo shrugged. Sometimes, like at home. The pipes were knocking because the pressure was wrong. The disposal was grinding because the bearings were failing. It's obvious if you listen. It's not obvious to anyone else. That's because nobody else listens. Miriam's eyes were bright. We need to test this properly. Controlled environment. Known structural issues. See if Leo can detect them. Why? Because if he can, she looked at Thaddeus, if he can hear structural damage, he could save lives. Buildings fail all the time. Bridges collapse. Inspection misses things. But if Leo can hear what inspectors can't see, Thaddeus wanted to say no. Wanted to keep his son away from anything that looked like exploitation. But he saw Leo's face. The boy was interested. Engaged in a way he hadn't been since before the accident. One test, Thaddeus said. Controlled, safe. And if Leo wants to stop, we stop. Agreed. They left Symphony Hall. Snow was falling harder now, the city disappearing under white. Leo walked between them, cane tapping the sidewalk. But Thaddeus noticed something. The tapping was different, not random, rhythmic, deliberate. The boy was listening to the city, hearing what nobody else could hear. And for the first time since the accident, Thaddeus wondered if maybe, just maybe, his son's blindness had given him a kind of sight that sighted people would never possess. The thought was terrifying and hopeful in equal measure. They drove home through snow that erased the world, rebuilding it in clean white silence. Inside the car, Leo hummed softly. Not a melody, just a tone. Testing the acoustic space. Understanding the geometry of the vehicle through sound. Thaddeus drove carefully. The roads were slick, dangerous, the same conditions that had killed his wife and stolen his son's sight. But this time they made it home safely. And tomorrow they would begin to discover what Leo's brain had built in the darkness. What gift had emerged from the ruins of loss? The test facility was a warehouse in Somerville. Red brick from the 1940s. Former textile factory converted into storage space. Miriam had rented it for a week using grant money she'd saved from her MIT days money, earmarked for ethical research she'd never gotten to conduct. Until now. Thaddeus stood in the cavernous space breath, misting in the February cold. The building had no heat, just exposed brick walls, wooden beams crossing the ceiling 40 feet overhead, and concrete floors that echoed every footstep. This is perfect, Miriam said, clipboard in hand. She wore a wool coat over her sweater boots that left wet prints on the dusty floor. Minimal acoustic treatment. We can set up controlled tests without interference. Graham Sutherland emerged from the shadows carrying a toolbox. Thaddeus's former business partner. Structural engineer. The man who'd stood beside him through a dozen projects before Thaddeus had pulled away from the world to focus on Leo. Graham, I didn't know you'd be here. Miriam called. Said you needed someone who understood building stress analysis. Graham set down the toolbox. I'm curious, and I owe you for the symphony hall work. That acoustic design was brilliant. The client thought it was too expensive. The client was an idiot. The design was perfect. They shook hands, not the formal greeting of strangers, the careful reconnection of friends who drifted apart. Leo stood near the entrance cane in one hand, head tilted. Processing. Building a three-dimensional model of the space using only sound. Big room, the boy said. 42 feet to the far wall. Ceiling is uneven support beams at different heights, and there's water damage. Northwest corner. The wood is soft. Graham walked to the northwest corner, looked up, pulled out a flashlight and shone it on the beam. Dark stains, sagging. He pressed his hand against the wood. It gave slightly under pressure. He's right. This beam is compromised. Probably old roof leak, Miriam wrote in her notebook. Leo, how did you know? The sound dies there, like when you knock on a hollow door versus a solid one. The wood has lost density. Probably rot. You can hear density differences. Leo shrugged. I pay attention. Thaddeus and Miriam exchanged glances. The boy genuinely didn't understand that his perception was abnormal. To Leo, the world had always sounded this way, transparent, revealing its structural secrets to anyone who listened. Okay, Miriam said, organizing her notes. Here's the plan. Graham has prepared 3 test stations. Each one has a structural issue, some visible, some hidden. Leo's going to examine each station and tell us what he hears. No touching, just acoustic analysis. And if I'm wrong, then we learn something. Science isn't about being right, it's about being precise. They moved to the first station. Graham had constructed a simple wall frame, 2x4 studs drywall on both sides. Standard residential construction. It looked perfect. This wall has a crack, Graham said, somewhere between the studs. Your job is to find it. Leo approached the wall, clicked his tongue. The sound bounced back, carrying information invisible to eyes, but obvious to ears that knew how to listen. He moved along the wall's length, clicking, listening. His fingers hovered near the surface but never touched. 5 feet, 10 feet. He stopped at 12 feet. Here, between these 2 studs. The drywall is separated from the frame. Internal crack, maybe 3 inches long. Graham marked the spot with chalk. Then he took a utility knife and carefully cut away a section of drywall. Behind it, a crack, vertical, exactly 3 inches long. Jesus, Graham whispered. Is that right? Leo asked. That's exactly right. Miriam was writing furiously. Leo, how did you know? The sound changed. At that spot, the echo came back faster. That means there's an air gap, empty space between the drywall and the stud, a crack. Station 2 was more complex. Graham had built a concrete column 4 feet tall, 12 inches diameter. Standard load-bearing support. It looked solid, professional, perfectly poured. This column has an internal defect, Graham said. A void, Air pocket that formed during the pour. Common mistake, usually invisible until the concrete fails under load. Find it. Leo circled the column, clicking. The sound bounced off the curved surface, creating complex interference patterns. He moved slowly, methodically, a scientist conducting an experiment. Top third, eastern side. The void is... He paused, clicked again. Roughly the size of a baseball, maybe a little smaller. Graham had a diagram. He checked it against Leo's assessment. His face went pale. That's within 2 inches of the actual location, and the size estimate is almost perfect. How is that possible? Thaddeus asked. I don't know. The acoustic signature of an internal void in concrete that should be impossible to detect without specialized equipment. Leo doesn't need equipment, Miriam said. He is the equipment. The third station was the most challenging. Graham had assembled a section of steel I-beam, the kind used in skyscraper construction. 10 feet long, 6 inches deep. It looked flawless, industrial, engineered to support enormous weight. This beam has metal fatigue, Graham said, microscopic cracks in the crystalline structure. Invisible to the naked eye, wouldn't show up on visual inspection, but under stress, this beam would fail catastrophically. Find the fatigue point. Leo approached the beam. This time he didn't just click. He hummed, a low tone, then higher, then lower again, shifting frequencies, listening for how the metal responded. The fatigue is near the center, but it's not surface damage, it's deep, inside the metal itself. He moved closer, hummed again, different frequency. The crystalline structure is wrong. I can hear it vibrating differently than the rest of the beam. Like, he searched for words. Like one instrument in an orchestra that's slightly out of tune. You don't notice it individually, but it doesn't blend right. Graham checked his documentation. The fatigue zone is 6 feet from the left end, dead center of the beam. That's what I said. You said near the center. I need precision. Leo hummed again, moved along the beam, stopped. 6 feet 3 inches from this end. Graham measured. 6 feet 2 inches, 1 inch off. Close enough, Graham said, voice shaking. More than close enough. Leo, do you understand what you just did? I found metal fatigue. You found microscopic structural damage using only sound. Damage that requires X-ray analysis or ultrasonic testing to detect. You did it by humming. Leo shrugged. It sounded wrong. They broke for lunch. Sandwiches from a deli down the street, coffee in paper cups. They sat on empty crates in the cold warehouse breath, steaming minds racing. We need to publish this, Miriam said. Document it properly. Leo's abilities, this could change how we approach structural inspection. Absolutely not, Thaddeus said. Why not? Because the moment you publish, every engineering firm and construction company in the country will want access to him. They'll treat him like a piece of equipment, a human ultrasound machine. We can control that, set boundaries. You can't control anything once it's public knowledge. I've seen what happens when people become valuable. They stop being people. They become assets. Graham nodded slowly. He's right, Miriam. I've worked in construction for 20 years. If building inspectors knew Leo could detect structural flaws, they're missing the pressure to use him would be enormous. Legal liability alone. So we just keep this quiet, pretend Leo doesn't have an ability that could save lives. We protect him first, application second. Miriam set down her coffee. I'm not suggesting we exploit him. I'm suggesting we understand what he can do so we can make informed decisions later. Later when he's old enough to decide for himself. Leo had been quiet during the debate. Now he spoke. Can I say something? 3 adults turned to look at him. I can hear buildings. I know that's weird. I know it's useful, but I don't want to spend my life crawling through construction sites listening for cracks. I just want... He stopped. I want to understand why I can do this, that's all. Miriam softened. That's fair. And that's what we're doing. Understanding, not exploiting. Promise? I promise. Thaddeus watched his son. The boy was learning to advocate for himself. Setting boundaries. Understanding that being useful and being used were different things. Maybe pulling him from Perkins had been the right choice after all. They spent the afternoon running more tests. Different materials. Different types of damage. Each time Leo identified the structural issues with uncanny accuracy. Wood with termite damage. Drywall with hidden mold. Brick with internal cracking. Glass with stress fractures. He heard it all. Explained it in terms of acoustic signatures and frequency responses. By 4 o'clock, Miriam had filled 3 notebooks. I need to analyze this data properly, she said. Run statistical models. But preliminary assessment, Leo's detection accuracy is above 95%. That's better than most mechanical testing equipment. And the range of materials, Graham asked? Comprehensive. Wood, concrete, metal, composite materials. He can detect structural anomalies in all of them. That shouldn't be possible. And yet, Miriam gestured at the test results. Graham began packing up his equipment. Thaddeus, can I talk to you privately? They stepped outside. February wind cut through their coats. The sky was gray, heavy with snow that hadn't fallen yet. I have a problem, Graham said. Professional problem. And I think Leo might be able to help. What kind of problem? I'm the structural engineer of record for a project in downtown Boston, mixed-use building. Offices and retail. We're scheduled to open in 3 months, but he paused. I'm worried. About what? The concrete. We used a new supplier, cheaper than our usual source. The test cylinders passed inspection, but I've been hearing rumors. Other projects using the same supplier have had issues. Voids, improper curing. Nothing catastrophic yet, but enough to make me nervous. Get it inspected. I have. Visual inspection. Everything looks fine. But visual doesn't catch internal defects. We'd need to core sample every column, every beam. That's destructive testing. Expensive. The client would never approve it without evidence of a problem. And you think Leo could find evidence? I think Leo could tell me if I'm being paranoid or if there's a real issue. One walkthrough. 30 minutes. Just listen to the structure. Thaddeus looked back at the warehouse. Through the dirty window, he could see Leo and Miriam examining another test sample. His son looked focused, engaged, happy in a way he hadn't been since before the accident. What's the building but Boston Public Library, the new wing, opens to the public April 1st. Thaddeus felt something cold settle in his stomach. That's a public building, thousands of people a day. 15,000 on average, more during peak season. And you think it might be structurally compromised. I think I want to be sure it's not. Leo could give me that certainty. Thaddeus looked at his friend. They'd worked together for 7 years before the accident. Graham was thorough, conservative, not prone to paranoia. If he was worried, there was reason to worry. I'll ask Leo. If he says no, that's the end of it. Fair enough. They went back inside. Miriam was demonstrating something with a tuning fork. Leo was laughing. The sound echoed in the empty warehouse, bouncing off brick and concrete. For a moment, Thaddeus could see it. The future where his son's abilities were valued. Where difference meant contribution instead of isolation. Where Leo could exist in the world not despite his blindness, but because of what that blindness had created. Then reality reasserted itself. The world wasn't kind to people who were different. It ground them down, forced conformity, punished uniqueness. But maybe, just maybe, they could carve out a small space. A protected area where Leo could be himself, where his gifts could help without hurting him. Leo, Thaddeus said, Graham has a question for you. The Boston Public Library stood on Boylston Street, massive, imposing. The original building dated to 1895 Italian Renaissance architecture designed by McKim, Mead and White, a temple to knowledge and civic pride. The new wing was different, modern, glass and steel. 6 stories of contemporary design connected to the historic building by an enclosed walkway. It looked expensive, confident, permanent. Graham had access codes. He led them through the construction entrance at dawn before workers arrived. The building was in final finishing stages. Drywall painted, floors polished, ceiling tiles installed. It looked ready, professional, safe. The concern is here, Graham said, leading them to the main atrium. 6 stories of open space. Glass ceiling overhead, exposed concrete columns supporting each floor. These columns, 32 of them, load-bearing. If they're compromised, the floors collapse, Thaddeus finished. Exactly. Leo stood in the center of the atrium, turned slowly, processing the acoustic space, the volume, the geometry, the materials. It's loud, he said. Too much echo. The glass ceiling is reflecting everything. Can you filter it? Miriam asked. Focus on the columns. I can try. He moved to the nearest column. 12 inches diameter, concrete with exposed aggregate finish, expensive, architectural. It looked perfect. Leo clicked, then hummed. Deep bass note. The column resonated slightly. His face changed. What is it? Thaddeus asked. Something's wrong. The column sounds hollow. Not everywhere, just in sections. Graham pulled out a tablet. Architectural drawings. Where which sections? Leo placed his hand on the concrete, not pressing, just touching, feeling the vibration. Here, between floors 2 and 3, and here, between 4 and 5. Graham made notes. Matching voids at similar heights. That suggests a systematic problem during the pour. Probably air pockets from improper vibration. How bad is it? Thaddeus asked. Don't know yet. Could be cosmetic. Could be structural. Leo, can you check the other columns? For the next hour, Leo moved through the atrium, checking each column, humming, clicking, listening to what the concrete revealed. 23 columns were fine, 9 had voids. Graham's face was gray. That's 28% failure rate, way above acceptable standards. What happens now? Miriam asked. Now I report this to the project manager. Demand destructive testing. If the voids are as extensive as Leo suggests, we'll need to reinforce or replace those columns before opening. And if they refuse, then I resign. And I take this data to the city building inspector. Data from a blind boy who hears structural defects. Data from a structural engineer who has reasonable cause to suspect deficiencies. Leo's assessment gives me that cause. They were preparing to leave when Leo stopped, turned toward the east wall. Wait, what is it? That wall, something's... He walked toward it, large glass panel, floor to ceiling, 20 feet wide. It looked like a window, but Graham's tablet showed it was load-bearing, structural glass, supporting the floor above. Leo got close, hummed. His expression shifted from curiosity to alarm. We need to leave, now. Why? The glass is fractured. Internal stress fractures. It's going to fail. Graham looked at the window. I don't see anything. It's inside the laminate, between the layers. The fractures are propagating. How can you possibly... A sound, sharp, like a gunshot. Everyone jumped. A crack appeared in the glass. Hairline, diagonal, starting from the upper left corner. Another crack, perpendicular to the first. Move, Graham shouted. They ran away from the glass, toward the construction entrance. Behind them, the crackling intensified. Multiple fractures spreading across the surface. They reached the entrance, turned back. The glass panel exploded, not loudly, just a sudden collapse. Thousands of fragments cascading to the floor. The noise was immense, like a building screaming. Then silence. They stood in the doorway staring at the devastation. The floor above sagged, not collapsed. The emergency supports held but visibly damaged. If the building had been occupied, people would have died. Graham was shaking. How did you know? I heard it breaking, slowly. The cracks were making sounds, high frequency, almost ultrasonic, but I could hear them growing. And you heard glass cracking before it cracked. I heard the stress, the fractures propagating through the material. It was going to fail. Just a matter of time. Miriam put a hand on Leo's shoulder. You just saved lives. You know that. I just listened. That's not just listening. That's, she looked at Thaddeus. That's something else. Graham was on his phone calling the project manager. His voice was tight, controlled, professional. But underneath, Thaddeus could hear the fear. The knowledge that they'd been 10 minutes from disaster. Thaddeus pulled Leo away from the entrance, back into the cold morning air. His son was trembling. Not from cold, from adrenaline, from the weight of what had almost happened. Are you okay? I heard it dying, the glass. It was screaming. But you told us. You warned us. That's what matters. What if I hadn't heard it? What if I'd been wrong? You weren't wrong. But I could have been. I don't know what I'm doing. He stopped. I'm just listening, and everyone's acting like I'm magic, like I have answers. But I don't. I just hear things. Thaddeus knelt down, eye level with his son. You hear things nobody else hears. That's not magic. That's attention, precision. You're not responsible for fixing the world. You're just responsible for being honest about what you hear. What if people get hurt because I missed something? What if people get hurt because nobody listened at all? Leo was quiet for a long moment. Behind them, sirens approached. Fire department, building inspectors, the machinery of disaster response grinding into action. I don't want to be a hero, Leo said. You're not a hero. You're a kid who can hear when buildings are lying. That's different. Miriam joined them. The project manager is on his way. Graham's explaining everything. They're going to evacuate the site. Full structural review before anyone enters the building again. Good. Leo, what you did in there? I didn't do anything. The glass was already breaking. I just heard it first. That's exactly my point. You heard it first. Before catastrophic failure, before casualties. That's not nothing. A black sedan pulled up. Man in an expensive suit got out. 50s, gray hair, face like granite. He walked straight to Graham. They talked. Thaddeus couldn't hear the words, but he could read the body language. Denial, anger, defensive posturing. The project manager didn't want to believe there was a problem. Graham pulled out his tablet, showed him the column data, the structural concerns, the glass failure that had just happened in real time. The project manager's expression changed. Denial shifted to fear. Fear shifted to calculation. He was doing math, legal liability, financial exposure, criminal negligence. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Graham walked back to them. He's shutting it down. Full inspection. They'll bring in independent structural engineers, test every column, replace the compromised glass panels. And the opening date, delayed indefinitely until they can guarantee public safety. Will they mention Leo? Not if we're smart. Official story is routine inspection revealed potential issues. My concerns as structural engineer of record triggered the review. Thank you. Thank you, Thaddeus. Your son probably saved lives, dozens, maybe hundreds. If that glass had failed during occupancy, he didn't finish, didn't need to. The sirens were louder now. Multiple vehicles, police, fire, building department. The scene was becoming official, documented. A problem that would be investigated and analyzed and reported. We should go, Thaddeus said. They walked to the car, Leo between Thaddeus and Miriam. The boy looked exhausted, drained. The emotional weight of catastrophe averted. Thaddeus drove them home, through morning traffic, past people heading to work who had no idea they'd just avoided tragedy. The city continued, oblivious, ordinary. That's what safety looked like. Nothing happening, disaster prevented so thoroughly that nobody knew it had been possible. At home, Leo went straight to his room, closed the door. Thaddeus heard the lock click, the boy's ritual of retreat after overwhelming experiences. Miriam stayed in the kitchen. Thaddeus made coffee, real coffee this time. Good grounds, proper ratio. The act of doing something normal helped. That was terrifying, Miriam said. Yes. And incredible. Also yes. We need to talk about what happens next. Thaddeus poured coffee, handed her a mug. What do you mean? I mean... She paused. Word is going to spread, not officially, but Graham will talk to colleagues. The project manager will tell his board. Within a month, people will know that Leo detected structural failures that professional inspectors missed. We don't confirm anything. We don't have to. The building is shut down. The reasons will leak, and people will ask questions. What kind of questions? The kind that lead to phone calls, requests, people with buildings they want examined, clients willing to pay. Leo is not for hire. I know, but they'll ask anyway, and some of them will have legitimate concerns. Buildings that might actually be dangerous. Schools, hospitals, places where lives are at risk. Thaddeus drank his coffee. It was good, better than anything he'd made in months. Small victory in a day of large problems. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Thaddeus, we're at the bridge. The library was the bridge. Now we're deciding whether to cross. Then the answer is no, we don't cross. Leo is 9. He's my son first. Everything else is distant second. Even if saying no means people get hurt. Even then, I'm not sacrificing my son's childhood to make the world safer. That's not his responsibility. Miriam nodded slowly. I respect that, but you should know Leo might not agree. What do you mean? I mean, he heard the glass screaming. He knew people could die, and he chose to speak up. That wasn't you making the decision. That was him. The words landed like stones. Thaddeus thought about his son. The boy who heard what others couldn't, who lived in a world of frequencies and overtones, who'd been given a gift he never asked for and a burden he didn't deserve. I just want him to be okay, Thaddeus said. I know, but okay might look different than you think. For Leo, okay might mean using what he can do, not hiding from it. From upstairs, Thaddeus heard movement, Leo's door opening, footsteps in the hallway. The boy appeared at the top of the stairs. Dad? Yeah. Can Miriam stay for dinner? I want to talk about what happened. Of course. Leo came down the stairs, slow, careful, hand on the railing. He'd gotten better at navigating the house, but he still moved with precision. No wasted motion, no risks. He sat at the kitchen table. The glass, it was in pain. Buildings don't feel pain, Miriam said gently. I know, but that's what it sounded like something suffering. And I knew, he stopped. I knew if I didn't say something it would hurt people, and I couldn't stay quiet. That was brave, Thaddeus said. It wasn't brave. It was necessary. There's a difference. Miriam and Thaddeus exchanged glances. The boy was processing something, working through ethical dimensions that most adults never confronted. What are you thinking? Miriam asked. I'm thinking, so, Leo's hands folded on the table. I'm thinking I have this thing I can do, this hearing. And it's not just about me. It's about what happens when I don't use it. You're not responsible for fixing every building in Boston, Thaddeus said. I know, but I am responsible for what I hear. If I hear something wrong and don't say anything, that's a choice. Silence settled over the kitchen. Outside, the city continued. Thousands of buildings standing, supporting millions of lives. Most of them fine. Some of them failing slowly, invisibly. Waiting for the moment when stress became catastrophe. And somewhere in Boston, Leo could hear them dying. The question was, what would they do about it? 3 days later, the phone call started. Thaddeus ignored the first 5. Construction companies, engineering firms, all asking the same question in different words. Could they hire the consultant who identified the library issues? How did they get this number? Thaddeus asked Graham during their 6th conversation that week. Word travels fast in construction. The project manager talked. His board talked. Now everyone knows there's someone who can detect structural problems that conventional inspection misses. They don't know it's Leo. They will. It's only a matter of time. Thaddeus hung up and looked at his son. Leo was in the listening chamber working through exercises with Miriam. The boy had been quieter since the library, not withdrawn, thoughtful, processing. That evening after Miriam left, Leo asked the question Thaddeus had been dreading. The phone calls. They're about me, aren't they? No point in lying, yes. What do they want? They want you to inspect buildings, find problems before people get hurt. Like the library. Yes, like the library. Leo was quiet for a long moment. What did you tell them? I told them no. Why, Kristen? Because you're 9 years old, because you deserve a childhood, because... Thaddeus stopped. Because I don't want you to become a tool people use. What if I want to help, Leo? What if I want to use what I can do? The boy's voice was steady, not argumentative, serious. The glass was screaming Dad, and I was the only one who could hear it. If I hadn't said something, people would have died. That's not nothing. You're right, it's not nothing, but it's also not your responsibility to save the world. I'm not trying to save the world. I'm just trying to, Leo searched for words. I'm just trying to listen. And if listening helps, then maybe that's what I should do. Thaddeus sat down across from his son. Do you understand what you're saying? If we say yes to this, if we let people know what you can do, your life changes forever. You won't be just Leo anymore. You'll be the kid who hears buildings, the human structural detector. People will want things from you, expect things, demand things. They already expect things. Principal Morrison expected me to ignore the piano. Perkins expected me to pretend I was like everyone else. The world expects me to be less. Maybe, Leo's hands folded on the table. Maybe it's time I expect more from myself. The words hit Thaddeus like a freight train. His son wasn't asking for permission. He was announcing a decision. If we do this, Thaddeus said slowly, we do it on our terms. No exploitation, no overwork. You're in control, always. Okay. And we start small. 1 building. We see how it goes. If it's too much, we stop. Okay. And you keep up with your studies, with Miriam's exercises, with having a life that's not just listening to concrete. Leo smiled. Okay. Thaddeus looked at his son, at the boy who'd lost his sight but found something else, something rare, something that could change how people understood buildings and safety and the invisible architecture of sound. All right, Thaddeus said, I'll make some calls. 6 months later, September arrived with cool air and changing leaves. The brownstone on Beacon Hill had become something new. Not just a home, a headquarters. The 3rd floor now held 2 rooms, the listening chamber where Leo still practiced daily, and next to it a teaching space. 5 chairs arranged in a semicircle, acoustic panels on the walls, equipment for demonstration. Leo stood at the front of the room. 10 years old now, taller, more confident. Behind dark glasses, his face was animated as he explained echolocation to 3 students. Click like this, he demonstrated. The sound bounces off surfaces. Hard surfaces reflect. Soft surfaces absorb. Listen to what comes back. The students clicked. 3 teenagers, 2 blind from birth, 1 recently blinded in an accident, all struggling to navigate a world designed for eyes. I don't hear anything, one said, frustrated. You're trying too hard, Leo said. Don't strain, just listen. The information is there. Your brain knows what to do with it. You just have to let it work. Thaddeus watched from the doorway. His son had become a teacher, not just of echolocation, but of confidence, of finding capability in disability. The work had been careful, controlled. Over 6 months, Leo had inspected 4 buildings, 2 schools, a hospital, a community center. Each time Graham supervised. Each time they documented findings through official engineering channels, never mentioning Leo by name, just consultation with acoustic specialist. 3 of the 4 buildings had minor issues, fixed before they became major problems. One was structurally sound, no catastrophes, no emergencies, just quiet prevention, the kind of success that looked like nothing had happened, which was exactly what success should look like. Dad, Leo called. We're done for today. Can you help Marcus with the door? He's still learning the hallway. Thaddeus helped the youngest student, Marcus 13, scared angry about his blindness, navigate out of the brownstone. This is stupid, Marcus muttered, clicking like some kind of dolphin. It doesn't work. It works, Thaddeus said. Leo navigates this entire house without touching the walls. You'll get there. Leo's a freak. Leo can hear you, Leo called from upstairs. And yes, I am. Being a freak is better than being helpless. Marcus's face flushed, but he didn't argue, because Leo was right, and Marcus knew it. After the students left, Thaddeus found Leo in the kitchen, making tea, moving through the space with the ease of someone who'd memorized every dimension. Good session. Marcus is struggling. He'll come around. I know. He reminds me of... Leo stopped. He reminds me of me, 2 years ago, angry at the world, angry at the darkness. You're not angry anymore. Leo poured water into his cup. The sound told him when it was full. I'm still angry sometimes, but now I have something to do with the anger. Teaching helps. The doorbell rang. Thaddeus answered it. Graham stood on the step holding a folder. The library opens next week, he said. They want you and Leo there for the ceremony. Both of you. As what the anonymous consultants. As honored guests. The project manager wants to thank you. Privately, no press, just acknowledgement. Thaddeus looked back at the kitchen. At his son, who'd saved lives by listening to what others couldn't hear. I'll ask Leo. The Boston Public Library reopening was a quiet affair. No ribbon cutting, no crowds, just city officials, the construction team, and a small group of invited guests. Leo stood in the main atrium, 6 stories of glass and steel. The compromised columns had been reinforced, the structural glass replaced. Everything that had been wrong was now right. It sounds different, Leo said. Different how, Graham asked. Safe, like it's resting instead of straining. The building is breathing easier. The project manager approached. Older man, gray hair, face that had aged 10 years and 6 months. Mr. Crane, Leo. He shook their hands. I wanted to say, he stopped, struggled with the words. What you did, what you found. If that glass had failed during occupancy, it didn't, Thaddeus said. That's what matters. But it could have, and I would have been responsible. Hundreds of people. His voice cracked. Thank you, both of you. You saved lives. You saved my conscience. You saved... He couldn't finish. Leo spoke. The building told us. We just listened. The project manager nodded, walked away, trying not to cry. Graham showed them the final documentation. Every column tested, every support beam verified. This building will stand for 100 years. Good, Leo said. That's what libraries should do. Stand. They walked through the completed space. Shelves filled with books, reading areas bathed in natural light from the repaired glass ceiling. The smell of new carpet and old knowledge mixing in the air. You did this, Miriam said. She joined them for the ceremony. This building exists because of you. The building exists because of engineers and architects and construction workers, Leo corrected. I just pointed out where things were wrong. That's not a small thing. No, but it's not everything either. They stood in the center of the atrium, where 6 months ago glass had screamed and Leo had listened, where disaster had been prevented by a boy who couldn't see but could hear what others missed. What now? Thaddeus asked his son. Now we go home, Leo said. I have students tomorrow, and Mrs. Alvarez is bringing calculus problems, and Miriam wants to try that new filtering exercise. That's it, back to normal. This is normal now, the buildings, the teaching, the listening. Leo turned toward his father. I used to think being blind meant I lost something, but I didn't lose anything. I just found it differently. Found what? My place, what I'm supposed to do. Leo smiled. I'm supposed to listen and teach other people how to listen, and maybe sometimes use what I hear to help. They walked toward the exit, father and son, one who designed spaces where sound behaved perfectly, one who heard when those spaces were breaking. Outside Boston continued, traffic in construction and the endless noise of a city in motion. To most people it was chaos, random sound without meaning. But to Leo it was information. Architecture rendered in frequencies. A world that spoke if you knew how to listen. They walked down Boylston Street, heading home. Leo's cane tapped the sidewalk, but he barely needed it anymore. He navigated by sound, by the echoes of his footsteps, by the acoustic shape of the city. Dad, yeah, thank you. For letting me be different, for not trying to fix me. Thaddeus felt his throat tighten. You were never broken, Leo. I was just too deaf to hear that. You hear it now? Yeah, I hear it now. They reached the car, got in, drove through the city they both loved. Thaddeus through the windshield, Leo through the symphony of sound that painted the world in frequencies and overtones. And somewhere in Boston, a building settled. A pipe knocked. A beam groaned under weight it couldn't support much longer. Leo heard it, filed it away. Not urgent, not yet, but worth monitoring. Because that's what he did. He listened. And in listening, he found his purpose. The world was still too loud, but Leo had learned to find the music in the noise, the warnings in the whispers, the truth in the frequencies that others couldn't hear. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.